Travis, you're sort of the jack of all trades coach. So when you go out there, what do you look at? What are you watching? First and then second, third? Do you have a process?
Sure, yeah. So for practice, the number one thing is just the organizational aspect of the practice to make sure everything's ready for Coach Rod. Because right now, I look at it as where Coach Rod, who calls our plays and is our offense coordinator, he needs everything set up the way he needs it to be set up. So the first thing I'm looking at is everything the way he needs it to be and what he wants it to be. And if it's not, then I'm alerting the coaches and making sure that. Then after that, when it comes to a football standpoint, is just the big picture. We're fortunate enough now with the staff that we have is Coach Rod's big picture play caller. I'm his assist as far as the big picture aspect can see and then feed him information. And then all the position coaches can now just focus in on coaching their individual position at a high level. They don't have to worry about all that other. So it's really kind of really an assignment-based staff where you should be really efficient with the numbers that we have as a staff, and it allows us to give our players individual attention. And so coach can just coach. I can look at the overall operation, make sure that's set up the way it needs to be set up, and then give big picture thoughts and give big picture. And then when if we split up practice, he's on one side, I'm on the other, and he can look at that play, then come over here, and I've got set up for him on that side. And so really just making sure everything's right for him so he can go out there and lead us.
We're still learning curve. I mean, obviously the players are learning how to play the way he wants to play. The coaches, there's a speed and a tempo. Where is that right now?
Yeah, that's the number one thing that we have to accomplish right now. Because even the guys here in spring have pretty good idea, the ones that have returned. But even then I think on our team we've got 40 guys that weren't here in the spring going through practice right now. And so the number one goal, especially early on in camp right now, is to make sure these kids understand what is playing hard by our definition. All right, and Coach Rod tells us all the time. He says, your definition of playing hard may be different. It probably is different than what I believe is playing hard. And we've got a lot of guys playing hard, but there's some guys that are playing hard for them, but we believe that they got more in them to play harder. And so the number one goal that we've got to establish right now as a staff and as a program, offense, defense, everything, is making sure our players at every position are playing as hard as they can. The fundamental is, and it's just as important as any fundamental we're going to teach, because that is a competitive advantage in today's world, I believe. Not everyone plays hard every play, every snap from first quarter to fourth quarter. And so that's going to be our identity. That's how we're going to play. And so just as important as any fundamental we're going to teach, any drill, any technique, any play we're going to do, is making sure these kids are understanding when we see it, that's it. That's what we need every play. And when you're not doing it, if we see it, we say it. And holding and coaching everybody on the field.
Obviously, the sooner the better.
Absolutely. And so, but we're much further along than we were in spring, but we have so many new guys too. It's getting them to that. So we're never going to be there until we have if we have 118 players, until all 118 understand it and know what it is. We're not going to be what we need to be until that's done. And so that's a huge priority for us right now.
How much does practice change now that you go into shells, and then how much more, obviously, when you get to full contact next week?
The good thing with shells is that now you can actually play ball. That's why I was getting the guys hyped up and all that stuff beforehand. And a lot of us coaches were like, this isn't, you spend so much time. The NCAA allows you some time over the summer to work with your guys. You spend some time, your helmet days or that. But football is played with pads. And that is the separator. And so now you're into a little bit of real football. A run play, that is what you get on the run play as far as the blocking and all. You can't say, oh, well, it'll be different in pads. No, we have pads now. So, it allows the physicality piece of it to now be, you can now start, practicing to that standard and upholding to that standard where, there's a lot of tag tempo in helmets where you just tag off. Now, when you're in shells, it's, you can mix in some thud, and when you go full pads, that's where we'll have some live periods. But right now, and then you could sit there and see who, is physical and then who needs to understand what physical is. So that's what I haven't watched the film yet, but excited to see. I thought today was a good day. Like, I thought, there was a lot of pads popping, guys were fired up. It was definitely a lot better than the previous day as far as intensity.
How much are
Speaking of physicality, Rich talked about wide receiver blocking, how important that is down the field. How did you see today from your ankle?
I've got to watch it some more. When you have, there's some aspects where it does show up. If you watch college football in the last 15, 20 years, the best offenses, especially doing what we do as a spread offense with 3 receivers or more, the best offenses are physical perimeter blockers. Every single one of them. Every single one of them. Like, it doesn't matter if you go back and you watch the film, like, they get after your ass, period. That's what you watch film from Jack State, you'll see guys like run, like the run breaks, and you have 2 receivers from this side of the field sprinting down and they may not even come remotely close to making a block, but they're running, and then you see the point of attack piece of it. And you don't always have to dominate the block if you're a shorter receiver that's not very big. As long as you're fighting, that's all that matters, and you're in good position with fundamentals. So that we have some emphasis in that in practice, and that is in our physicality in our program is from it goes from offensive line to tight ends to receivers to running backs to even quarterbacks, and quarterbacks may have to get in there and mix it up a little bit. So, but yeah, today was the first day. I've got to see it. I didn't see anybody turn anything down. It's probably more of not a want-to thing. It's probably more of a technique fundamental thing if we did miss anything today. Because like I said, our guys have really have had the right mentality of that, because sometimes you have to like stick their face in the fan. Our guys have been willing to do that on their own for the most part. So, but that is a major priority for us. We've identified that over spring, and coach has implemented that in practice immediately the moment we put pads on.
What's your role in the evaluation process, all these position battles? Obviously, since you're kind of a jack-of-all-trades coach, what is your role in those meetings? How much input do you feel?
Sure. Yeah. No. That's so. If we're talking about a position, and coach asks, usually, it's usually coach. Coach tells us what he thinks, and that's what matters, and that's where we go. But if he asks an opinion, he'll ask the position coach and myself, what we think, and and that's one thing good about coach is like, we don't have to worry about like he's going to tell us what he wants and we're going to do it. And then the moment he wants an opinion, he asks us, and he's very welcoming to all input.
Are you kind of involved in each offensive
Yes,
position, though?
every position.
Quarterback coach would obviously not probably giving as much input on the wide receiver, but you're in each one.
Correct. Yes.
Okay.
Yeah. I mean, it's just the overall picture. That's the good thing about me is after I coached the running backs here for spring, I've coached every position outside the offensive line. And luckily, I was born into an offensive line household, so I've got some experience, about 41 years of being around an offensive line coach. So I have a little bit of an idea on that, and I probably could. I always say I did want to coach the offensive line at some point in time. I think I'm past that right now. But yeah, and it's like our coaching staff is phenomenal. Like Jack McNeil, who's not only coached with Coach Rod, and that's a huge advantage for us of having an offensive line coach that's coached with Coach Rod and understand his expectation of what he wants and what he needs. And in a league where they coach together in a pretty tough league too as well. And then he's coached at other schools and been in the NFL. So, it's great to work with him and get his feedback, and we can talk and brainstorm. And same thing, Coach Porter, who's, coached some elite backs in his past and bounce stuff off him. And then a lot of our other coaches, Ryan Garrett, Nice Wonder, like our whole staff, obviously Rhett and Pat, the quarterback, and, I'm probably Logan Bradley, who we just brought on. Our coaching staff, like I'm really excited about them. We got a great mixture, Coach Rod Hire staff, of guys that have coached it at elite level and been at different schools at elite levels, but then also guys that have played it in his system or played it at a high level. So our players are getting poured into by all different aspects. Guys that have coached it at a high level and coached it for a long time, and then guys that have played it. And not only played it at a high level, and played it in his system. So it's a really put together, and we all get along extremely well. So I mean it's a blast coming to work every day. So be able to work with those guys, and that's why I work with them. I help guide and help lead, and help make sure we're hitting this. We identify this as something we need to fix. Let's make sure we're drilling that in an individual period. And so, but like I said, they've done a great job. They've got their position rooms, and they're coaching their rear ends off.
There's a lot of unique things going on. Obviously, the things that Rich does offensively are unique and different, and some of the stuff that Zach does is unique and different. What are the challenges when you're facing that, and all these things are flying together for these players. How do you get these guys to with all these different things going on?
Yeah, that's what I love about Coach Rod and our offense is like it doesn't matter really what the defense does. We're going to do what we do and make them stop it. And you have to live by that every day because if you try to scheme up what Zach brings every day, I mean, it's like day one, we're seeing things that normally you wouldn't see in a traditional spot. You wouldn't see that. It would be accumulation of day 1, 2, 3, and 4, maybe get to day 5. He puts all that in on day 1. And some coaches would be like, "Oh, I don't want to see that. I don't want to see that." Coach Rod says this, like, "Let's go," and like, good, good. We need to do this.
But isn't that how it's going to be during
That's
the game?
exactly everything. Like that's why it's the chaos you create.
Yeah.
And not only we talk about being in great shape, but that's the physical toughness, but the mental toughness. That's part of the mental toughness. Is not only the adversity that you see in a practice, not only from a pressure standpoint that we maybe put them in as coaches, but then the X and O aspect and the decisions you have to make at that point in time. And that's why we always tell our guys, when you get to the game's going to be easy. You're going to have the game plan. They're going to do a handful of stuff. You're going to be like, man, they're there. They're not moving all over the place. I don't have to worry about this. So that's really why I think Coach Rod and Coach Allie get along so well, and they're like this because they're really the same person, just two different ways. As far as mentality of how they implement and do what they do. And so it's an iron sharpens iron situation. I love it because I've competed against Zach in 2023, so I know everything that you had to prepare for. And literally when I went into my game against him, when I competed against him, I said, all right, my first 2 series, I'm going to call these plays because I want to see how he's playing us because each game he came out with a different game plan over the previous 2 seasons. So I had to make sure I had a plan to go against him. And then he came out in a certain defense, like, all right, so then I got to go do this. And that's what the problem he presents. And not only that, then he has compliments. All right, if you want to do this, it's a chess game, And so to be able to see that on offense every day, it benefits our guys. So our quarterbacks, they see, this training camp, they'll see more looks from a secondary standpoint, anything that they'll see in any one game. They'll see just about what they'll see the entire season all through training camp probably.
Better to see it August 1st
100%.
in the third quarter of game 1.
100%.
And deal with it.
100%.
Yeah.
The way he employs the tight ends is one of the biggest changes from the early days of his offense. You've got a lot of history, obviously, with this offense too. Outside of that, are there any other, schematic, bigger changes that you've seen from early days to now?
Coach, that's why I told this in recruiting when we had a lot of these, high school recruits and transfers come in, And sometimes people will try to tell you, oh, well, we just run the ball, or we just. I said, well, you look at Arizona; they had a passer that threw for 3,800 yards in the season. And still holds like single game records out there. So you don't get to be a play caller at this level for as many years as Coach has done it, or anybody. Unless you're good at what you do, and the good ones adapt. They adapt to the personnel, they adapt to the situation, they adapt to the league, the teams, whatever they have, and they just and Coach says it all the time. He's like, I love winning so much that I'm not going to not change if I need to do so. And so what he's done over the years is this is an accumulation of everything that's worked in the past, and we have the ability to get to those things. And the tight end piece is something that's allowed us to be, like when I got here and I got to see it, I was like, man, this is not anything what it was when we had 5, 10, and 35 back in the backfield, right? So, but it's really neat, and it allows us to, and that's what Coach says all the time is, if we have an injury, he's ran an offense where he can throw out 4 wideouts out there. If we don't have enough wideouts, we can throw out 2 running backs out there, or 2 tight ends, or it's flexibility. And so if we have really good players here, we can take advantage of that. If we have really good players here or shortage players here, then we could take advantage of that or fix it with. So I think the flexibility and the personnel is something that's definitely advanced over the years. And but that's just what good play callers do, and they get in something new and they like it and they keep moving forward and adapting and creating. And there's a reason why he innovated the 2-minute spread offense back in Glenville State days, and now he's still doing it however many years later.
Going back to
the wide receivers who are successful at that, what's the breakdown of like the mental side of that versus the physical side of it versus technique? Like, what makes a good downfield
That's a
block?
very good question. It's all three. You've got to want to do it, right? You've got to have that mentality like, hey, I'm the hammer, he's the nail. You know, you also can be so amped up to go do it. You can have bad technique and you can blow you by the time you want to come to balance. He's already by you. So there's a fundamental aspect to it too, and understanding, you know, the leverage, the depth, and who and where's the play hitting, what kind of where do I need to fit up on the player, and there's all that aspect to it. But then the physicality, and then also the technique, because if your hands are outside, guess what? Holding call -10, right? So that's a good question. It's all three. It really is. But you can't be good at it without all three. If you have two of the three, you're not going to be what we need. Does that make sense? So good question though. All right, appreciate it, guys. Thank y'all.